Tonight, a Larry Barker investigation into a New Mexico vanishing act involving $32 million. In one of the largest consumer cases in state history, a company was ordered to repay New Mexico consumers millions of dollars.
But then the company and all those millions simply disappeared. Here's Larry's investigation, the Vanishing Act.
This is the worst example where consumers are getting screwed in the history of the state of New Mexico.
I think it's disgraceful.
Well, I think it's an outrage.
I don't know how they sleep at night. It's sickening.
It is among the most significant financial investigations that's ever been pursued here. And the damage left in the wake of this corporate con is staggering. Tens of thousands of New Mexico victims scammed out of millions of dollars. Former Assistant AG Scott Fuqua worked on the case.
I don't know how a person does this for a living, banks millions of dollars personally, and feels as though they're engaged in any even remotely legitimate endeavor.
It was called FastBucks, a Texas-based small loan company that operated in 5 states, including New Mexico, with dozens of outlets across the state. But the FastBucks operation was hardly by the book.
FastBucks was in the high-interest, short-term loan business. Its customers were mostly low-income individuals who typically would borrow a couple $100 at interest rates as high as 650%. For example, a Crown Point resident went to FastBucks and took out a 1-year, $800 loan at 521%. She ended up paying FastBucks more than $3,000 in interest. Over an 11-year period, FastBucks raked in $116 million from 44,000 New Mexico customers.
Raul Torres is New Mexico's Attorney General.
The interest rates that were being charged by FastBucks were outrageous. It was basically acting like a loan shark.
The idea that you can build a financially successful business that is fundamentally predicated on extracting money from people who don't have it, it's mind-blowing.
In 2009, the AG sued FastBucks, accusing it of playing fast and loose with the law. A judge later ruled FastBucks' business practices were unfair and unconscionable.
The evidence showed that in a court of law, and the judge held that this was a shady company, and more importantly, that they owed the state of New Mexico millions of dollars.
In what was one of the largest consumer judgments in state history, FastBucks was ordered to pay victims a whopping $32 million in restitution. The judgment was heralded as a victory for New Mexico families over the misconduct of a predatory loan business, but the celebration was short-lived. Rather than pay the multi-million-dollar judgment, FastBucks filed an appeal, declared bankruptcy, and then disappeared. A FastBucks lawyer made it official. In an email to the AG, he wrote, "The entire FastBucks operation ceased doing business. There are no assets of the organization to satisfy any portion of the judgment." But FastBucks did not really vanish. In fact, it was business as usual for the loan company. They weren't gone, they were just hiding out in plain sight. To avoid paying the $32 million judgment, FastBucks pulled a fast one. They simply changed their corporate name to Infinity Loans. Perhaps they thought nobody would notice Infinity was actually FastBucks in disguise. This is the Santa Fe FastBucks, and this is the same store renamed Infinity Loans. Here's the Clovis FastBucks, and here it's called Infinity. They used the same roofs in Carlsbad and Farmington. All over the state, FastBucks was gone, and Infinity took its place.
So how did FastBucks pull it off? Well, they had an accomplice. the state of New Mexico. You see, loan companies are regulated by the state's Financial Institutions Division. If you want to open a new loan business, you must first get a license. So when Infinity applied for a license, state regulators failed to notice Infinity was actually FastBucks in disguise.
Infinity's license applications were identical to the FastBucks applications. The corporate addresses were the same, and so were the corporate officers, the store addresses, even the phone numbers. And even though state officials say they knew about the FastBucks $32 million judgment, they approved the license applications anyway, helping FastBucks officially disappear and reincarnate as Infinity Loans.
What's the difference between FastBucks and Infinity Loans?
One was called FastBucks, the other was called Infinity Loans. It's the same company with a different name.
In 2021, a new lawsuit was filed alleging FastBucks CEO Charles Horton had engaged in deception by transferring his assets to Infinity Loans in order to circumvent the multi-million-dollar judgment. That case has now been settled. Charles Horton agrees to pay New Mexico $664,000. The state will also seek to collect another $5 million from various properties owned by Horton. The New Mexico Infinity outlets settled the lawsuit for $300,000. Infinity Loans has since been sold to another firm that was not involved in the deception.
And so New Mexico's longest-running consumer protection case comes to an end, some 14 years after it began. Today, FastBucks is gone. So is Infinity, along with some $32 million belonging to New Mexico victims. Case closed.
They've been allowed to date to get away with $34 million worth of violations of New Mexico law by taking that money from those among us in New Mexico who have the least to give. That can't be right.
It was much easier to steal from New Mexicans and then pay pricey lawyers to evade the law, and this is what needs to change in terms of how we regulate these payday lending companies.
What I'm most heartbroken about is not, the impact necessarily on this office, but the impact on those people who were expecting and hoping for some kind of justice that frankly still hasn't come as a result of this case.
Larry Barker, KRQE, News 13.
In 2022, the New Mexico legislature put an end to predatory lending by capping the percentage rate loan companies.